I only said 2 words. It's mine. And the sound that echoed wasn't glass. It was the sound of my bone connecting with stone. My father, Richard, had just thrown me. Slammed my head directly into the corner of a solid marble baptismal font. The music stopped. 300 guests stopped breathing. In the sudden, terrible silence, a single phone flashed. And 10 million views later, they finally lost the power to write my story for me. 30 minutes earlier, I was standing by the service entrance of the Grand Hall at Thorncliffe Manor. It's an old habit staying near the exit. You can observe the entire ecosystem of a room without being pulled into its current. The air in the Hudson Valley is supposed to be crisp, smelling of river, water, and old forests. But in here, in this ballroom, it was thick, suffocating. It was the smell of thousands of imported flowers dying slowly in their crystal vases, mixed with the sharp tang of vintage champagne and the heavy, sweet perfume my mother, Sharon, always wore. I was the functional shadow, the one who knew how to fix things. In my family, I was the structure. But my sister, Jenna, was the facade. She was the influencer, the golden child, the one who knew how to smile while others did the work. Tonight, she was radiant, her laughter echoing, drawing a circle of admirers tighter around her. I was holding a glass of water. The ice long since melted. Then came the sound. Ting. 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 My father, Richard, tapped his champagne flute. The string quartet faded. The chatter of 300 guests died, replaced by an expectant hush. He beamed. The very picture of the proud patriarch, a private equity king surveying his domain. But I wasn't watching his smile. I was watching the way the bourbon sat in his glass. Dark and heavy. Welcome, he boomed, his voice filling the room. Welcome, friends, family, to my new son-in-law, Ryan. Polite applause. Jenna looked perfect. Her new husband Ryan at her side. On this incredible day, my father continued, his voice softening with practiced emotion. Your mother and I wanted to give Jenna and Ryan something truly special, a foundation for their new life. But we also wanted to give something back to this wonderful town of Hawthorne Valley. Guests leaned in. Phones were raised. So we are thrilled to announce. Richard spread his arms wide. A charitable gift. In honor of the happy couple, the family is donating the historic St. Ida Jude's Church to be restored as a public museum. In my daughter Jenna's name. The room didn't just applaud. It erupted. A standing ovation. Whistles. Cheers. How generous, someone shouted. The air left my body in a silent vacuum. St. Jude's. The collapsed ruin I had found 5 years ago. The wreck I had poured every dollar. I had $150,000 of my own money and my entire soul into Taos. The place I had rebuilt with my own hands. My studio. My masterpiece. My house. They were applauding the grandest, most brutal theft I had ever witnessed. I looked at my father, bathing in the applause for his generosity. I looked at Jenna, who was already performing her tearful con. Photogenic surprise. They all assumed I was in on it. That I, Maya, the quiet older sister, had finally done something worthwhile, given my masterpiece away. A wire inside me that had been frayed for 30 years finally snapped. I didn't run. I didn't shout. I just started walking. My heels clicked on the stone floor, cutting through the applause. Click, click, click. The crowd parted. This wasn't in the program. I stopped right in front of my father. His smile was still fixed, but his eyes were cold. The bourbon was swimming in them. What is it? Maya, he said. His voice a low warning. Come to congratulate your sister. I looked at him. I looked at the 300 guests. I looked at the phone, still pointed our way. That's a lie, I said. My voice was clear. It didn't shake. You can't give away what isn't yours. The room went silent. What he hissed. The mask of the charming patriarch shattering. I said. That's a lie. I repeated. Louder. It's my studio. I bought it. I rebuilt it. It is mine. "Don't you dare," he growled, taking a step toward me. "Don't you dare ruin this. You are giving away my house," I said, my voice rising. Not in panic, but in pure, cold clarity. "It's mine." He moved faster than I thought possible. His hand shot out. It wasn't a slap. It was a grab. His fingers clamped onto my shoulder like an iron hook. "You will be silent," he snarled, his face inches from mine. The smell of bourbon, a toxic cloud. And he shoved me. He shoved me with the full force of his body. The full force of his rage. My feet left the floor. There was a moment of weightlessness. And then impact. My head and back slammed into the sharp, unforgiving corner of the solid marble baptismal font. The sound? It wasn't a dull thud. It was a crack. A sharp, wet, intimate sound that tore the air apart. My water glass shattered. For a second, there was no sound. Just a high-pitched ringing in my ears. Then the screams started. A sharp sting bloomed on the back of my head. And then a sudden, shocking warmth. I touched my hair. My fingers came away dark, glistening in the chandelier light. Blood. I looked up. The room was chaos. But my eyes found three things. My mother. Sharon. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the guests. Her face, a mask of social horror. My sister. Jenna. Her hand was over her mouth. Her eyes wide. Watching her perfect day. Her perfect content. Implode. And then I saw him, the man by the bar. He hadn't flinched. He hadn't lowered his phone. He was still filming. The next morning, I woke up in a hospital bed with 9 staples in my scalp and a mild concussion. A nurse was looking at her phone. Her eyes wide. "Honey," she said. "You're everywhere." The clip had hit 10 million views. The police came in next. 2 officers. "Ma'am?" The older one said. "We have the hotel security footage from overhead. We have 34 other cell phone videos. We already have your father detained. I have to ask, do you wish to press charges?" I thought of the crack. I thought of my rose window. I thought of 5 years of my life. "Yes," I said. "Absolutely." To understand the crack, you have to understand what was broken. St. Jude's wasn't just a building. It was my resurrection. I found it 5 years ago. After I left home. The city had condemned it. The roof was gone, letting in rain and snow. The floorboards were rotten. And the walls were covered in mildew. But I saw the bones. I saw the good stone foundation. In my family, I was taught to do while Jenna was taught to receive. While she was sent on trips to find herself, I was working 2 jobs. Learning how to frame walls and run electrical. I poured every cent I earned, $150,000 over 5 years, into that building. My masterpiece was the great rose window. It was a spiderweb of shattered glass and twisted lead. I spent an entire winter, night after night, with my hands bleeding, meticulously soldering thousands of tiny, broken pieces of colored glass back together. When I finally finished, the sun hit it for the first time. It didn't just light up the room. It filled it with color. It was a symphony of ruby and cobalt and emerald. It was the first truly beautiful thing I had ever made for myself. My family visited exactly once. My mother, Sharon, wrinkled her nose at the smell of sawdust and primer. My sister, Jenna, looked at my rose window and said, "It's so dark. All this color. Aren't you going to just replace it with clear glass? It would be so much cleaner." My father, Richard, just tapped a restored 19th century oak beam with his expensive shoe. "I don't get it, Maya," he said. Not with malice. Just with genuine confusion. "Why waste so much good money on this pile of bricks?" I didn't answer. I just understood. And that's the key. You have to understand my father. He doesn't see people. He sees assets. This is what I call the ultimate ownership syndrome. It's a classic trait of a certain kind of narcissist. In his mind, his children aren't independent people. We are extensions of his will. Subsidiaries of his personal brand. My success was not my own. It was just another item on his balance sheet. So when he stood on that stage, he wasn't giving away my life's work. He was simply reallocating one of his properties to another, more favored property. He didn't feel like he was stealing. He felt he had the right. I didn't go home. I called my friend Daniel. He's a structural engineer, the only person who understood what I had been building at St. Priaz Jude's. He was the one who helped me brace the main spire. He was waiting for me at the hospital exit. He didn't offer pity. He just looked at the bandage on my head and said, "I know someone." An hour later, I was sitting in the glass and steel office of Naomi. She was not a family lawyer. She was a litigator. She was tall, sharp, and had the coldest, clearest eyes I'd ever seen. She was everything my family was not. She was a load-bearing wall. I told her everything. The toast. The attack. The video. She didn't write notes. She just listened. When I finished, she turned to her computer. "The assault is a criminal matter. That's for the DA. Our first move is to protect the asset." She typed for a moment. "As of now," she said, "I have filed an emergency restraining order against Richard, Sharon, and Jenna. They are legally barred from coming within 500 feet of you or the church. We are also filing a temporary injunction against any transfer of title. That property is now in legal lockdown. He couldn't sell it if he tried." It was the first full breath I'd taken in 48 hours. Then, my phone rang. My mother, Sharon. I let it go to voicemail. I played it on speaker for Naomi. Her voice was a wreck, choked with practiced theatrical sobs. "Maya. Darling. Please. What are you doing? You're pressing charges against your father. You're destroying this family. You're ruining Jenna's life. Her new marriage. This is all a mistake. Honey. You have to stop this. Call it off. Family is first. Maya. Family is first." I looked at Naomi. Her face was impassive. "Did you hear her ask if you were okay?" Naomi asked. I hadn't. "Did you hear her apologize for what he did?" I hadn't. "She is not begging for you," Naomi said, her voice like ice. "She is begging for him. She is using guilt to try and coerce you into dropping a felony charge. This isn't a plea. It's a control tactic." I stared at the phone, and I suddenly understood. We're taught that blood is thicker than water. That family is a sacred, unbreakable bond. But that's a lie. We're told to keep us in line. Family is not a blood contract. It's supposed to be a safe harbor. My family was a shipwreck. They weren't just toxic. They were a drowning pool. And when you're in a drowning pool, you don't feel guilty for climbing out. You just swim. Cutting ties with toxic blood isn't an act of betrayal. It's the final, necessary act of self-preservation. It's not about finding a new family. It's about finally, for the first time, finding yourself. I saved the audio file. I emailed it to Naomi. Subject: coercion attempt 1. I was done feeling guilty. I just felt clear. An hour later, Naomi called back. Her voice had changed. There was something new in it. Something sharp. "Maya," she said, "I found the man who filmed the video. And he's not a random guest. His name is Mark. He's an old contractor. Your father, Richard, buried him in lawsuits and bankrupted him on the Hawthorne Plaza project 10 years ago. Deliberately." I sat down. He wasn't there to celebrate. Naomi continued. He was there to watch. He told me he'd been waiting 10 years for Richard to show the world who he really was. And he didn't just film the assault. "What else does he have?" I whispered. "Maya. He has everything. He has the original unedited emails, the fraudulent invoices, the proof of what your father did to him." My world tilted. This was no longer a family dispute about a church. It was a war. And I had just found a new, and very motivated, general. The reconciliation brunch was my family's last attempt at damage control. They held it in the same grand hall at Thorncliffe Manor. The flowers were a day old, their perfume turning sweet and sour, the smell of rot setting in beneath the luxury. About 30 guests were there. The ones who hadn't fled, all speaking in nervous whispers. The whispers stopped when we walked in. First, Naomi. Me lavier. Carrying her laptop and a sleek black projector. Then me. My head held high. The 9 staples hidden by my hair. But I knew everyone could see them. And behind me, my friend, Daniel. His presence as solid as a structural beam. I saw my father. Richard. He was by the omelet bar. A glass of bourbon in his hand, at 10 in the morning. He was trying to perform. Laughing too loudly. He saw me. The laughter died. Well, look who it is. He snarled. Trying to reclaim his power. Always did like to be dramatic. Naomi ignored him. She walked to the center of the room. To the exact spot where I had fallen. She set up her projector. The hotel manager, his face pale and sweaty, rushed to help her plug it in. What the hell is this? Richard snapped. A slideshow. The wedding's over. Naomi finished connecting her laptop. A bright white light hit the portable screen. Then, an image, the familiar, grainy view from the viral video. Good morning, everyone, Naomi said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was so cold it cut through every whisper. Mr. Hart was kind enough to give his version of events Saturday night. His legal team is already attempting to reframe those events as an unfortunate family stumble. We felt it was important to review the facts. She clicked the mouse. The video played. My father's toast. My walk. The argument. Then the screens split into 4. 3 new angles appeared. Cell phone footage from different sides of the room. And then the 4th. The master. The God's eye view. It was the crystal clear, high-definition overhead security footage from Thorncliffe Manor itself. And with it, the audio. Not muffled by music. It was pristine. Captured by the ceiling microphones. You will not embarrass this family, my father's voice. Araf snarl filled the silent ballroom. It's my studio. It is mine. My voice. Clear and cold. Not anymore. He roared. And then the act. The 4-angle view of the grab. The pivot. The violent, full-bodied thrust. My body flying backward. And the sound, amplified by the event speakers. The crack was obscene. It was a sharp, wet, percussive snap. The sound of my skull hitting the marble font. As clear and sickening as a gunshot. A woman in the front row screamed and clapped her hand over her mouth. A man cursed. Jesus Christ. The video continued. It showed, in perfect HD, the blood spreading. It showed my father, panting, his face twisted in rage. It showed my mother, Sharon, looking at the guests. It showed my sister, Jenna, looking at the cameras. Naomi let it play for 10 more seconds of chaos and screams. Then she paused it. On a perfect, frozen, multi-angle close-up of my father's face. No one spoke. The only sound was the woman in the front, who was now openly sobbing. That, Naomi said, her voice dropping an octave, was the unfortunate family stumble. She walked to an empty table and placed a thick black binder on it. The heavy thud was an answer to the crack on the video. And this, she said, is the why. She clicked the mouse. The screen changed. It was now a split image. On one side, a photo of Saint Elazar, Jude's 5 years ago, a collapsed Rote Raun. On the other, a photo from last week, a restored, breathtaking masterpiece. My client, Maya, Naomi said, purchased this property 5 years ago. Click. The deed appeared. Sole owner Maya. She alone funded its restoration. Click. A spreadsheet. Materials $150,000. Click. An invoice for roofing. Paid Maya. Click. An invoice for custom milled oak. Paid Maya. Click. The property tax records for the last 5 years. Paid Maya. The room was a courtroom. The guests were the jury. The masks my family had worn for decades were shattered on the floor. I watched the new groom. Ryan. His face was ashen. He looked at the frozen image of the assault. He looked at the invoices. He looked at Jenna, who had started to cry. Her performance failing in the harsh morning light. He did the most eloquent thing I had ever seen him do. He took one small, deliberate step away from her. Then a second. He was disconnecting. He was stepping off the deck of a sinking ship. Jenna saw it. Her fake sobs turned into a real, choked gasp. But my wedding, she whispered. She ruined my wedding. No one moved to comfort her. My father finally found his voice. He slammed his glass down. This is a disgrace, he bellowed. This is a private matter. She's hysterical. No. Dad, I said. My voice was quiet, but it silenced his on. The truth was on the screen. It's not. It's about a church. Just then, 2 police officers, who had been waiting outside the door, stepped into the room. They walked past the projector, past the sobbing guests, and stopped right in front of my father. Richard, the officer said, his voice calm. You're under arrest. You violated the emergency restraining order the moment your wife, he nodded at my mother, who looked like she might faint, made contact with your daughter. My mother, Sharon, had rushed toward me when Naomi finished, grabbing my arm, hissing, "You have to stop this." I hadn't known she was violating the order, but Naomi had. The officers turned my father around. The sound of the handcuffs clicking shut was the only sound in the room. It was the final, perfect click. The collapse was quicker than I could have imagined. My father, Richard, was arrested at the brunch. The image of him, the great patriarch of Hawthorne Valley, being led out of the manor in handcuffs, his face a mask of purple rage, was on the local news by noon. He made bail, but the damage was done. His private equity firm bled investors. The partners who had laughed at his jokes at the wedding were now distancing themselves, issuing public statements. His entire empire, built on the illusion of power and control, began to crumble. My sister Jenna's perfect marriage lasted less than 48 hours. The moment the financial proof hit the screen, Ryan's family saw the truth. They weren't just marrying into a dramatic family, they were marrying into a fraudulent one. The marriage was annulled so fast it barely left a paper trail. Jenna, I heard, moved back east. Her influencer career vaporized. The trial was a formality. When you have felony assault in high definition, from 4 different angles, the defense doesn't have much to work with. They tried to paint me as a hysterical, ungrateful daughter. Then Naomi put the contractor, Mark, on the stand. He didn't just bring the video, he brought a decade's worth of my father's dirty laundry. The fraudulent invoices, the intimidation tactics. My father wasn't just on trial for assaulting me. He was on trial for his entire life of corruption. The verdict was guilty. Felony assault. Conspiracy to commit fraud. The judge gave him a sentence that matched the severity of the crime. It was real. It was custodial. And then, the final, most important piece of paper. The judge signed the permanent restraining order, a lifetime ban, barring Richard, Sharon, and Jenna from ever coming within 500 feet of me or my church. It was the boundary I had tried to build my entire life. Now, it was a wall of ink and law. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel victorious. I just felt light. The 30-year-old weight in my chest was finally gone. The house and I could finally breathe. I stood in St. Jude's a week later. The silence was different. It wasn't empty, it was peaceful. I walked to the great rose window, the one I had pieced together from thousands of broken shards. The afternoon sun was pouring through it, throwing a river of ruby and cobalt and emerald light across the floor. A wall of light? They taught me that justice was about punishment, that revenge was about destruction. But they were wrong. True justice isn't about tearing down, it's about what you choose to build in its place. I opened my laptop. I started a new file. I called it the Hawthorne Glass Workshop. My masterpiece wasn't just my fortress anymore. It was about to become a school. I was going to teach other women. Women who were rebuilding their own lives. How to do the one thing I had finally learned to do myself. How to take the broken pieces, the shattered and discarded scraps, and build a wall of your own. Not to keep the world out, but to let the light in. Thank you so much for listening. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. And let me know in the comments what's the one thing you've built for yourself that you are most proud of.